Hi, I'm Christina Muscari of Pretty Distressed. In today's video, I'm gonna be taking my useless hall closet that's under my stairs, adding some custom shelves, making this a lot more usable and pretty for guests to use when they come over. So this closet makeover and organization starts right now. This video is sponsored by my friends at RYOBI, and make sure you stick around to the very end of this video because I'm gonna be doing a huge giveaway with them with some of the power tools that you'll see in this build. This is my hall closet that I will be tackling today. It's pretty unusable right now. It's under my stairs, so it has a slanted ceiling. The rack is all the way at the back, very low to the ground, and stuff just piles up on the floor. So when I do have guests come over, they can't even wade through all this stuff to hang their coats up. So my plan today is to get everything off the floor. I'm moving the pool toys up to the attic, and I'm gonna take all these brooms and mops and pans off of this wall and relocate them somewhere else. So now I have a blank slate. My plan is to put hooks on this wall so it's easy for people to hang their coats and purses when they come in. And then on this side, I'm going to do some built-in shelving to give me vertical storage and get everything off of the floor. And I'm going to be removing the wire rack so the shelves can go all the way along the back wall. I have never built shelves before, so I took a look at my master closet as well as my pantry that had built-ins when we moved in and figured out how I could piece this together myself. I visualized what everything was going to look like by taping it off and using some 12-inch shelves that I had to make sure that there was definitely still going to be enough room to move around in there. I was very excited to get rid of this wire rack, and then I went in and more accurately marked where I wanted each shelf and how long they were going to be so I knew what materials to buy. After doing some research, I decided to use MDF boards for my shelving. You could also use plywood or wood, but just based off of the weight that I need these to hold and the cost, I went with MDF. For the cleats that my shelving is going to sit on, I'm using a 1x3 common board. You can buy these primed or unprimed. I got unprimed because they are a lot cheaper, and I'm just going to use a primer on them to cover up the knots before I seal them with paint. And I bought 1x2s to do all the trimming and finishing work on these. I did buy these primed because you are going to see a lot of the fronts of these, so I wanted them to look really nice. I was able to pick these all up at Home Depot, and in total I spent $142.63 on these materials. The first thing I need to do is hang the cleats on the walls. Those are going to be made up of the 1x3, so I'm using a stud finder to find all my studs in the walls, and I'm going to be attaching the cleats to each of these studs. Walls are never completely square or level, so I measured each section where I needed to hang my cleats and came out and made a cut on my miter saw. If you don't have a miter saw, I'm just doing all straight cuts today, so you could definitely use a circular saw instead. I'm using some premium wood screws that are 2.5 inches long to attach my cleats into the studs. I'm hanging these based on all the measurements I made earlier on where I want my shelves to be. I've decided to make the shelves about 15 inches apart so that basic cube storage baskets can fit on these shelves easily. I'm making sure everything is nice and level before I start putting in my screws, and then I'm keeping that up there as each screw goes in to make sure it's level all the way across. And here's a little tip to hang the rest of your cleats pretty quickly. You want to line this one up right under the one you just placed, put the screws in part way, and then scoot it up to exactly where you want to install it. And those screws will be exactly where the stud is because the studs run vertically all the way up the wall. After I got all the cleats installed on the back wall, I used that as my guide to install all the ones on the side of the wall. Again, I used a level to make sure they were perfectly level with the ones that I had already installed. Once those support cleats were up, I'm grabbing my 3/4 quarter MDF that is 12 inches wide, and I'm cutting those boards to size to hang the shelves. Like I mentioned earlier, you can also use plywood or wood depending on how much weight bearing you need on your shelves and your budget. I measured each shelf individually and cut them to size and then see how they fit in the closet. Your closet is not going to be completely level, nor is it going to be completely square. So I found it best to just measure the section, cut it, and then place it in there to make sure it fit. After I cut the smaller shelves that are going to go on the back of the wall, I put 4 pocket holes across the bottom of them. That way when I go to install them in the shelf, I have 4 screws that I can put in to connect the shorter shelf and the longer shelf, and it's going to give them a stronger hold. I'm using my RYOBI brushless drill to drill the pocket holes as well as screw them together. To attach the boards to the support beams or the cleats on the wall, I'm going to use my 18 gauge brad nailer, and I have this loaded with brad nails that are 1 1/4 inch. I'm using 1 brad nail about every 6 inches. You could use screws here as well, but since I'm using MDF, I like using the brad nailer better. This brad nailer has become one of my favorite tools, and I use it on almost every project I have now. And one of my favorite things about it is that it's part of the RYOBI 18 volt 1+ system. This battery is compatible with over 280 tools in the RYOBI line, and they're designed with advanced lithium cells and technology, so they will last longer and deliver more power to help you tackle any job. And if you're a beginner with power tools and you really don't know where to start, RYOBI has a great resource for you on their YouTube channel. They have lots of beginner-friendly instructional videos on how to use each tool. Once the shelves were installed and secured, I was ready to trim it all out to make it look really pretty and polished. I measured each shelf individually, made the cut with the trim, and then would install it. I'm placing the trim flush with the shelf, and a little bit will hang underneath. When you're putting in the brad nail, make sure you're lining it up with the shelf. I'm using the 1 1/4 inch nails that I used to install the shelves, and I'm placing a brad nail about every 6 inches apart. This is enough to hold it. You don't want to go overkill with your brad nails because you're going to have to fill all these tiny holes. Since this side doesn't have a wall to put a support beam on, I need to put one on that will go to the floor so it will support the weight of the front of the shelf. So I'm putting pocket holes on each side of the shelf, and I'm going to use screws to attach it to my support beam. I'm using a 1x4 common board as my support beam. I'm just making sure that this goes all the way down to the floor and that each one of my shelves are level before I screw them in. Now that my build is complete, I am just prepping it to paint. So I'm taking some wood filler and filling all my little tiny holes for my brad nails and any screws that I used. Once my wood filler was dry, I sanded down the entire surface with my orbital sander with a 220 sandpaper. That way all my wood filler is smooth and sanded down and my surface is prepared for paint. I'm using an oil-based primer to prep my shelving. Since it is MDF, this is going to seal it up nice and tight before I introduce a water-based paint, which could swell the MDF. This primer is going to seal it up. It also is going to seal all my common board really well. It's going to hide those knots, and it's going to block in those tannins that are in that wood, so I should not get any bleed through or see any of that come through when I put my paint on. Now at this point, I could have just painted the shelves white and been done with it because the walls were already painted, the floors are done, and they even have baseboards on them. So it would have looked pretty good, but I thought it was pretty boring. So I wanted to elevate it a little bit, make it look more like a designer element. So I picked up Scuff Defense to paint the walls and then a trim and door enamel paint to paint the shelving. But I'm going to do it all one color. I'm going to do it in this Umber. It's a beautiful, rich, dark brown with some orange undertones. You might recognize this color because this is the color that I painted my dining room hutch that I made over, and I'm just obsessed with this color and it really fits in with my color scheme. I know it's not for everyone, but it is on trend right now, and it looks amazing in person. I'm gonna paint the shelving the same color with a different paint, but before I do that, I'm gonna use an all-purpose caulk and go around any nooks and crannies. This is going to fill in any gaps, so when I go to add my paint, everything is just going to look really seamless and professional. After I do a bead of caulk, I just grab a wet t-shirt and smooth it out. I will be painting the shelves the same color, but I'm using a different paint and a different sheen. This is a semi-gloss cabinet door and trim enamel. It is going to be really durable, really easy to clean up, and it's water-based. So it performs like an oil-based paint, but it is water-based, so the cleanup is really easy on it. And now the walls are eggshell, but this is going to be semi-gloss, so it'll have the same color, but it'll have a really cool different contrast between the shelving and the wall. I'm applying it with a brush and a foam roller to get a really smooth finish on this. I'm also painting the wall space behind the shelving with this enamel paint to make it look more cohesive. And just know you could paint the whole room in this cabinet paint, but it would be really glossy and really shiny, and when the light reflects off of it, you might see all those brush strokes and things. So I like using a flatter paint for the wall and the ceiling. I did 2 coats on the shelves and the walls, and now it's time for the finishing touches. I painted this utility cover as well as got a cable hider from Amazon, which was paintable, to hide that modem a little bit better on the shelf. And now I'm installing these brass hooks that I got so people will have an actual place to hang their coats and purses when they come over. And since guests will be coming in this closet, I want to make it look as neat and organized as possible. So I grabbed a few baskets off of Amazon to hide all the things in that I'm going to store on the shelves. And now I have a place to store toilet paper and paper towels besides on the floor, so I'm just stacking these up on the bottom shelf so they're easy for my kids to grab. And then I splurged on some nicer, more textured designer baskets for the back wall, since you'll see these right when you walk in. This top back shelf really isn't usable except for holding the modem. It is very shallow and really close to that slanted ceiling. So I made a little board and painted it the same color as the wall to cover up that modem a little bit better. And then I'm just putting some faux greenery on the top here just for a pop of color and a little design fun, since I can't really store anything up here. And for that finishing touch, I had this rug that I use a lot for my staging, and it just matches perfectly in here, and my daughter thought it would be a nice feature for guests as well. Okay, are you ready for the big reveal? Just to remind you, here is the closet under the stairs that we started off with. Very boring and non-functional. And here is the completed closet. Okay, this project took me forever to do and film in this tiny space, but it was so worth it. I have so much storage in here that's really functional. I have everything off the floor, and the guests actually have a place to hang their coats, and I'm not going to be embarrassed for them to open this closet because I think it looks really beautiful too. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I am doing a huge giveaway with RYOBI. You have a chance to win these 4 tools that you can use for your own shelf build. There will be one winner, so check that description box on details how you can get entered. Thanks for joining me for today's project. If you want to see more makeovers with my power tools in action, you can click this video right here. I will be back soon with another project makeover, and I'll see you guys next time.